Thank you for joining us for this video presentation on the intake process to the Regional Center. The agenda for today, in this presentation, we will cover a short look at the Regional Center system, eligibility criteria for Regional Center services, your first contact and the intake interview, the evaluation process, how eligibility is determined, and what is the IPP. What is the Lanterman Act? The law says that it is very important that each person receive the services and supports that meet their needs and choices. The Lanterman Act recognizes that people with developmental disabilities may need help to live full, productive lives. The Lanterman Act outlines the rights of individuals with developmental disabilities and their families by informing them about how the regional centers and service providers can help these individuals, what services and supports they can obtain, how to use the individualized program plan to get the needed services, what to do when someone violates the Lanterman Act, and how to improve the system. What is the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS? The Lanterman Act established a partnership between the Department of Developmental Services, called DDS for short, and regional centers to provide services and supports for people with developmental disabilities. DDS is the state agency that monitors the regional centers and makes sure that the Lanterman Act is implemented. The state service system is designed to meet the needs and choices of individuals at each stage of their lives, and to the extent possible, serve them in their home and communities, providing choices that are reflective of lifestyle, cultural, and linguistic backgrounds. What are regional centers? The other half of the partnership under the Lanterman Act are private nonprofit entities called regional centers. The regional center is the point of contact in your community for obtaining the services and supports an individual with disabilities wants or needs. There are 21 regional centers in California. Each one serves a different area of the state. This map of California indicates the location of the 21 regional centers. The inset indicates the 7 regional centers in Los Angeles County. Who is eligible for regional center services? There are 5 disability categories that the regional center serves, and those are intellectual disability, which used to be called mental retardation, but we do not use that term any longer, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, not controlled by medication, autism disorder, and the 5th condition. What is the 5th category? Even if you do not have autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, or an intellectual disability, you may still have an eligible developmental disability if you meet the requirements of the 5th category. The 5th category is really 2 categories. You're eligible for regional center services under the 5th category if you can prove that either you have a condition closely related to intellectual disability, or you require treatment similar to a person with intellectual disability. All areas of disability have to be what is called a substantial disability, which we will talk about in a moment. The law excludes conditions that are only psychiatric or only mental health or physical or only learning disabilities. An individual can qualify for regional center services if they have one of these conditions, but only if they also have one of the 5 developmental disabilities we just covered. Additionally, the disability must have started before the age of 18, and it must be expected to continue indefinitely. What is a substantial disability? It's not enough to have a diagnosis of autism, cerebral palsy, epilepsy, or an intellectual disability. The disability has to be substantial in nature. Substantial is defined as a major impairment of cognitive and or social functioning that requires team planning and coordination of services to help the individual reach their maximum potential. And so this has to do mainly with the activities of daily living. Cognition is a term referring to the mental processes involved in gaining knowledge and comprehension. These cognitive processes include thinking, knowing, remembering, judging, and problem solving. There must also be significant functional limitations in 3 or more of the following areas of major life activities: learning, communication, receptive language, which is what they can understand, and expressive language, what they can say. Self-care, mobility, self-direction, meaning being able to make your own decisions, and as an adult, having the capacity for independent living and economic self-sufficiency. It is important to know that each regional center has its own application process. These are general guidelines, but you must check with your local regional center for their requirements. The intake form is usually 1 page long and is fairly simple. It asks for the usual information of name, address, and contact person, and it asks about the nature of the disability. As mentioned before, there are 21 regional centers in California, and each one covers a specific geographic area. You must apply to the center closest to where you live. To find out which center covers your area, you can go on the DDS website, or you can call at the numbers shown on the slide. So once the regional center has your intake application, it will schedule an appointment to meet with the individual applying for the services and their family if applicable. They will ask for personal information about you. Bring all of your records to the appointment, such as medical records, school records, evaluations and assessments, and anything else you have that describes the disability and the impact of the disability. You will sign releases so that the regional center can contact the medical professionals you have seen or worked with, and then the regional center assessment process begins. Who will I meet at the regional center? After the regional center has determined that a developmental disability may be present, an intake interview will be scheduled with the individual and their family. An interdisciplinary team will be assembled that includes at least a doctor, a psychologist, a service coordinator, and may include other health professionals as well. What should I bring to the interview? In addition to the things that we already mentioned, you can bring report cards, IEPs, any other relevant reports or information, or any other documentation you have that indicates why the person may meet the eligibility criteria. What is the timeline for the intake process? After you apply for services, the regional center must complete the initial intake meeting within 15 working days. After the first meeting, the regional center has 120 days to make a decision about eligibility. If you're found eligible, the regional center then has 60 days to develop what is called an IPP, or an individual program plan. If you are not found eligible for services, you will receive a written notice of denial by certified mail within 5 days. You have the right to appeal the denial, but be sure to do so within 30 days. So once you become eligible for regional center services, the regional center must offer you two service alternatives: services with the traditional model or self-determination services. You must learn the differences between both to know which model best suits your needs. In the traditional model, this is the way that your loved one or a regional center client receives services from the regional center. Services are purchased with a purchase order. Services are limited to providers registered with your regional center. Your service coordinator organizes your supports. You must ask your service coordinator for services, and payment rates are authorized by the regional centers. In the self-determination program, participants have the opportunity to have more control in developing their service plans and selecting service providers to best meet their needs. So services are purchased through financial management services. Service providers may or may not be registered with your regional center. You organize your supports and services, and you meet with your coordinator and tell her which supports you need, and you will have a spending plan based on your annual budget. So at the first individual program plan, or IPP meeting, it's possible that the regional center may combine the determination of eligibility meeting with the first IPP meeting. The results of that team meeting is a written IPP based on current levels of functioning and includes short and long-term recommendations for services. The regional center will work with you and your family, if appropriate, to develop your IPP. Your IPP is very important because it explains what services will be provided. It is a contract between you and the regional center, and it describes the services and supports that the regional center will provide or help you to get. Once you and the regional center agree on what is in the IPP, the regional center must fulfill what the IPP says. You can only get the services listed in your IPP unless you change your IPP. The IPP describes your needs, preferences, and choices, your goals and objectives, and the services and supports that you need in order to reach those goals. The IPP focuses on you and, where appropriate, on your family. Your IPP should help you stay in the community and enjoy an independent, productive, and typical life. So when will the IPP be reviewed? The law says that people must have an IPP meeting at least once every 3 years. In reality, it typically happens annually during the birth month of the individual. And that meeting can be held either at the regional center office when the pandemic circumstances allow, or your home, or Zoom, or whatever is comfortable for you. What is a service coordinator? Once eligibility is determined, a case manager or service coordinator is assigned to help develop a plan for services, tell you where and what services are available, and help you get these services. Because your relationship with your service coordinator is such an important one, no person can continue as your service coordinator unless you agree. If you ask for a different service coordinator, the regional center must assign a new one. If the regional center wants to change your assigned service coordinator permanently, it has to give you written notice within 10 business days. What services and supports may I have access to? DDS is responsible for designing and coordinating services for Californians with developmental disabilities. DDS contracts with regional centers to plan, access, coordinate, and monitor these services. Some of the services and supports provided by the regional centers include information and referral, assessment and diagnosis, counseling, lifelong individualized planning and service coordination, purchase of necessary services included in the individual program plan, outreach, the resource development, and assistance in finding and using community and other resources. Other services and supports can include advocacy for the protection of legal, civil, and service rights, early intervention services for at-risk infants and toddlers and their families, genetic counseling, family support, planning, placement, and monitoring for 24-hour out-of-home care, training and educational opportunities for individuals and families, community education about developmental disabilities. What if the regional center says that I'm not eligible for an assessment or services? If the regional center decides that you are not eligible for services or an assessment and you disagree, you have the right to appeal. It's important to remember that it's best to count 30 days after the date on the letter that says you are not eligible, not the date that you actually receive the letter. What happens if you move? You can move to different areas in California and still receive services. The new regional center must not tell you that you have to wait for services or that existing clients in the new regional center have first priority. Every state has its own unique service system, and regional center services do not follow the individual out of state. However, if you return to California, simply request to reactivate your case in your local area. For more information about applying for regional center services, you can contact any of the agencies listed here. Disability Rights California is the largest disability advocacy organization in the country, and we're lucky to have them here in California. On their website, they have a terrific set of guidelines written in plain English that help you understand the law and everything you need to know about applying for regional center services, advocating for yourself, supports and services, living arrangements, what to do if you disagree with the regional center, and much, much more. You can also find more information on the DDS website, on the State Council on Developmental Disabilities website, and on our website here at PHP. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found this presentation useful and informative. We will see you soon.